The technique in trail running, it's the most important topic that you'll be covering here in this course, because it's different. That we are not running in paved surface, you are not running in flat terrain. So this is why the technique in trail running is super important to know. So I invite Paul Capel to join me to show you the best techniques on the mountains. And we start with the uphill technique. And what do you think is a good technique for uphills?
So for me it's very important to use the poles, the first thing. In ultra distance give you a lot of energy.
But so when you start to use poles, like until 100 kilometers race, you use or not?
It's depending the hills. In my case, I use always. So I have always with me.
But in a half marathon?
Depending the hill. If the hill is really steep,
yeah,
I use.
Okay.
If the hill is not really steep, I don't use. But I prefer the downhills in my case. So the uphills, I don't like too much. So that's why I use the poles, because I need it.
Yeah.
And then on the downhills,
no poles.
No poles, and I take advantage.
Okay.
So I try to walk a little bit more on the uphills to save my energy, for on the downhills attack a little bit. And it's really important to know that on the uphills we use more the calf.
Yeah.
And we need to try not stress the quadriceps on the uphills. That's why I use the poles. And because then in the downhill I will use the quadriceps. And it's really important to know that not always on the uphills you must to run. Sometimes in ultra trails, a lot of times, we walk and you improve more walking than running. So in this case, in Mont Blanc, I walk a lot in a lot of uphills, and then I have energy for the downhills. So I think it's important to know that when you can run or when you need to walk. So it's important that the people know it.
But how do you know to measure your pace? Like you run until you can, or you like to change? Like not now I walk because it's technical, or how do you measure that?
I think that in my case I try to take the advantage on more on the flat zones in the uphill. I try to run, but then when the uphill starts to be a little bit more steep, I walk. I don't want to lose energy there.
Okay.
Because the difference of walk or run in an uphill can be 2 minutes. But then if you have more energy for the downhill, you will win more minutes. So normally I try to walk in more than 50% of hills, and then less than 50% I try to run, more or less. But it's depending also the energy. When the race is going on and you cross 100 kilometers, you try to walk more.
Okay.
And your case?
Yes, also I try to change, just to change my muscle group, because as you explained, like in the upper hills you use a lot of calf, and I remember I'm Brazilian, and in Brazil you don't have so much steep terrain as in Europe, for example. And when I came to Europe 10 years ago, I spent like 1.5 years learning how to use my calves in the upper hills. And in the upper hills usually I use just the point of my feet, because also I don't need to use all my feet on the ground. So, but this technique took to me 1 year to learn, because in the beginning it was burning my calves so much, but then after when I learned it was better. So it's small steps, and just use the calves. And I've been learning, and now I try to practice, because usually in the upper hill when I start to walk, I like to do like long steps, but this is wrong. Now I'm learning to do smaller but faster. It's super hard to do small and faster, but I think it's the way. It's like I try to put in my mind also, like the bike. When you go up hills by bike, use the small chain, like just to go faster, and you don't spend so much
have
energy.
More cadence, no?
Yeah, to have more cadence. I think it's the same idea, the same logic. And also, and so for the upper hill, it's important to work the calves a lot.
And the important thing that you told is important, use this part of the shoes.
Yeah.
not all the food, because you lost in the uphill, you lost the energy. So it's important the body in front, this, and try to do less steps, but more cadence, more pa 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 pa.
Do you do intervals in uphill and intervals in downhill, or because usually the runners they do just in uphill, and you think this is important, and also in the downhill is important?
Yeah. I when I train, I do it. I do intervals on the uphills, long and short, but then on the downhills. But on the downhills, I try to do it in a easy terrain, because if you do in a technical terrain, is really dangerous. But it's important also for your muscles, because your muscles needs to know that in some parts of the race, you can push more than normal. And if you train before, then on the race you can do it. So I do it. But the intervals of downhills are more long than the intervals on uphills.
I do intervals in the downhill, but also never on the track, not on trails, single tracks, always in piste, that is a dirty road or like kind of asphalt. I think it's super important to make sure that my body is used to do speed in the downhill, getting this speed.
And also because the races win on the downhill.
What's your secret about the downhill sections?
For the downhills, I have two kind of downhills, or two kind of races. The first one, when I want to attack a race, or when I want to run fast, I pretend to impulse my body on the front, so the body is not going down. So I try to have not the leg straight, but like this with minimum angle. And the important thing is the foot. All the impact is on the front, and try to be in front of you. So it's like the movement really athletic.
Okay.
And then in ultra distance, what happens when you are really tired? You need security, because if not, you fall down. So the second position is in the downhills. I go the body more
behind,
doing this jogging. Not 90 degrees, 60 degrees. And then the foot is not in front. The foot is going like this, more on the floor, to have more security. So when I go down, I move the body like this, and with more security, doing the jogging. But when I want to attack, the movement is not this, it's more this. And the body more up, and the foot like this. So I have these two kind of position, and it's really complicated. Have the first one, the attack, when you are tired, so you need to go more down like a chair and have security.
I agree with you, and also like in this position of attack, for example, what I do, especially if it's technical terrain, sometimes I do little jumps. I use in this attack position when fast downhill. You can also do these jumps, and you can use your point of with your toes, and then you economize your energy and you can go fast. You don't need to use all your feet on the floor. And when I'm tired, and also like when it's piste, when it's a dirty road or asphalt, it's okay to not be like so in front, and you can be a little bit behind, because then it's also a kind of braking. If you do like this, you are braking your speed, what is good, And also you can use your arms, and remember that in the downhill, what makes you to have the balance, the equilibrium, to not fall, is the core. Okay, so the core is super important to press like your body, like your abdominal, and then you just go for it. Then if you do that, you can go fast and not break it. Like usually sometimes you start like to break. No, like just relax the legs, but put your strong core and just don't break, and just open your steps, and you can go fast. And it's like the downhill by bike. Usually you don't look here, you look over there. Then that makes sure that you can read all the terrain, and then you can have this speed. Because if you look here, you go slow. If you look over there, then you can go faster.
And you can analyze the terrain.
All the track.
And do you recommend for the downhills do also workouts of core?
Yes, sure.
So we train also the cardio, the running, and then we have the complement of the workout, of course.
Yes, and also like the downhill, it's quadriceps. So it's super important to have a strong quadriceps, otherwise you have knee problems. So I never had knee problems because I work so much like the downhill and the stretch, like the strength of my legs.